Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our schools. Today, we are joined by a father of 4 and soon to be representative for House District 56 right here in Texas. Welcome, Pat Curry.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for being such a strong advocate for parents.
Absolutely.
You and I have talked a lot about this, of why education savings accounts are not a silver bullet for improving education, but definitely a part of the buckshot that we need to course correct a system that's really struggling for millions of kids.
Correct. And I mean, there's so many different aspects to it that are so useful, right? I mean, we can break it down into any number of zones, first and foremost. And I do think it was a good rhetoric that competition does improve businesses, right? And competition will improve public schools. And when public schools have turned into government schools, that's when you really have an issue, right? And I'm going to simply say, this is not a red or a blue issue. This is a red, white, and blue issue. This is everybody's issue. And, when you have so many of our kids that are not ready for work when they come out of high school, or not ready to even go to college, they don't even know what they want to be when they go to college, right? And so when you have so many children in our schools that are not at grade level reading and not at grade level math, those are basic principles. They don't even know when to put their cell phones down. They don't know how to show up somewhere on time. They don't understand. They can't even spell OSHA. I mean, that's bad, right? And so times have changed tremendously. And, if you look back at history and in the last 20 years, think about, and I'm an older person, so when I went to school, it was very different. We didn't have cell phones.
Right.
We didn't have social media. Al Gore had not invented the internet yet. So the reality is that if you look at what's changed in the family unit, what's changed with social media, now it used to, back in mid-90s, it was $5 million to buy a computer that was as powerful as a single cell phone is today.
Right.
Right. I mean, so it's crazy where we've come. And so these kids have so much power in their hands, and so do their parents. So the parents aren't paying as much attention to the kids. The parents are expecting their kids to learn from their phones and from all these things. And the schools have had a really difficult time adjusting to that. And our job is to help them adjust.
Yeah. I think that's a great point that you're bringing up, not just with cell phones, but the culture in general in schools is things have changed. Things have drastically changed. And I hear this all the time from parents and teachers and even administrators who will acknowledge that there has been a definitive shift in the culture within schools, in the curriculum with schools, and it has permeated every aspect. So we've been trying to go after CRT in the schools and DEI and while recognizing smartphones are causing a massive problem of attention and what's going on, which is probably why we see a huge resurgence of parents looking for a classical education, which keeps those cell phones out of the classroom and focuses on the basics that you were talking about. Let's just make sure that kids can read on grade level and can do math.
Is that the 3 R's: read, writing, arithmetic?
There it is. There it is. And that's what, the education system should be doing. And unfortunately, we're looking at across the board, we have 5.5 million kids in Texas public schools, and over half of them cannot read on grade level. So as a business owner, a very successful business owner, you touched on this a little bit. We're seeing kids that not only are they not prepared to launch into the world, but even those soft skills, that understanding of showing up on time, working hard, going the extra mile, all of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in your own businesses and those in the business community? They're sharing with you about the concerns of the next generation of Texas and the workforce that is entering into our working system that are supposed to provide a living for themselves and families and contribute to society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, God, we could talk about this for hours. It probably, I would say it started at least in my career, it probably started 15 years ago, maybe 20,
Okay.
where and I'm going to use a specific example of the heating, the HVAC and plumbing industry. I bought a business 20 years ago, and when I first bought that business, and we were able to hire people, and you were able to get people interested in training to become a tech. They had enough education to be able to pass the original tests, and so on. And you'd hire them as a helper, and then they'd learn as they went, and then they'd pass a test, and then they'd learn some more, and then they'd ultimately get more and more accreditation and get licensed to do the job that they were doing. Within about 3 or 4 years, it became pretty obvious that the helpers couldn't even spell wrench. And so all of a sudden, we had to start taking them through some very basic training and teaching on English.
Should have been done in probably second grade.
Absolutely.
I'm fairly certain that wrench was a second grade spelling word for my kid.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, and much less crescent wrench.
Right.
Pipe wrench, they could spell pipe. But I'm not making fun of that. It became a more and more serious issues. And so now you're all of a sudden go back to inflation and what's happened in the last 15 years with the inflationary numbers, right? And something that cost $100 in 2007 cost $156 at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
Well, $20 of that $56 occurred in the last 3.5 years since Biden and Harris were elected. That's a big number.
It's a big number.
These kids can't keep up with that. So now they can't afford McDonald's. So you're starting to see a shift where over a period of time, they could kind of afford to live with their parents. COVID happens, things happen. They could still hang out and they could develop before they finally had to go get a job. Now they're realizing that rent's through the roof, taxes are through the roof. They can't afford to go eat at McDonald's anymore, and they can't work at McDonald's and eat at McDonald's. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think the shift that we're seeing today, and I think the reason that as every year that goes by, it gets more and more prevalent, is because you have inflation coupled with the need, coupled with the fact that the parents are also getting a little older, and they're like, hey, get out of my house, man. I mean, get off my couch, get off my Wi-Fi. Right. I mean, and move on. And so I do think you're going to start seeing a shift back, but the schools have to adjust.
Yeah.
Right? And the culture of the family that used to be centered around the family and the evening meal is no longer centered around the evening meal, right? We don't have meals on Sunday afternoons like we did after church growing up, right? I mean, we do at our house, but a lot of homes aren't doing that.
Right.
And so I think that's where we have to help improve a system that needs help.
Yes, that's it. Is the entire system, and it's not just the K through 12 system. It is the higher education system. We are not providing children with what they need to launch. And a lot of what's going on is this focus on identity. There's a lot of identity politics going on in the classrooms, and as we've shifted away from what made America and Texas the greatest country and the greatest state that's ever existed, which is that entrepreneurial spirit, that desire to learn, grow, provide, be better. And I do think that I hope you're correct that there will be a shift back. I do see that with, again, the growth in the classical education model where we're teaching kids how to think, where we're teaching them how to spot logical fallacies. So when they're scrolling on social media or watching the propaganda on the news, that they can recognize where those problems and those inaccuracies are in the messaging that's being delivered to them. And that is something that I hear a lot of parents that are frustrated with in our K through 12 system is, so we've shifted away from the basics in education. And unfortunately, we've replaced a lot of that time that should be spent mastering spelling and basic arithmetic and things like that. And we've inserted this whole kind of identity, far leftist ideology where that we're talking a whole lot about skin color and a whole lot about victims and victimizers and completely changing the narrative that is going on in our classrooms. And parents are frustrated. They're very upset. And then you throw in the inappropriate library books that are in across Texas and this hypersexualization that's going on. And that's where I would say this parent empowerment movement has truly swept Texas. And you are a part of kind of a new incoming, very conservative traditionalist class of legislators that say we got to get back to the basics of what made Texas so great, that brought the Texas miracle to Texas, the eighth largest economy in the world. But the only way that we maintain that is if we ensure that our next generation has a great education. And in the fields that you're in, I love to talk about, you talked about plumbing, and we know that the Workforce Commission says we're going to be short 10,000 electricians in 5 years. We're going to be short 6,000 plumbers, 4,500 HVAC workers, 4,000 oil and gas workers. I mean, these really high paying careers.
Correct.
And we can't even find workers to do it. But you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about how exciting that these education savings accounts can be used for career and technical education.
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about why that's so important, particularly for our young males who do tend to go into these fields where they use their hands, where they're outside, where they're doing hard labor a lot of times. But that is something that a lot of men, a lot of young men are drawn to, and why that's an important aspect of empowering parents and students with education savings accounts.
Yeah. So as you well know, I mean, has been a focus of mine because I'm into vocational training, and it's not just plumbing and electricians. It's every kind of job, right? I mean, there's so many jobs that don't require a college degree.
Right.
Any job that doesn't require a college degree does require job preparedness training, workforce development training, even the basics, right? And so the vocational side of ESA is of the most of high interest to me, because we have, and I think I'm correct on this statistic, that 90% of the students in the state of Texas are within 45 minutes of a technical education.
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Even closer. That's right.
Yeah, I thought so. I knew it was somewhere close.
Yeah, it's close.
And I have been wrong once before, but anyway.
You were close.
I know, but that's Aggie math too. I am an Aggie. So but the reality of it is that you have so many different technical paths and so many non-technical paths that can be gone, because we have community colleges, we have major universities, we have technical college, TSTC being one of them, where a parent should be able to take a child that's a freshman and be able to offer them a class at MCC. It may be a nursing. It could be a basic engineering math class. It could at Baylor. It could be a plumbing class, right? And get them into an environment to where they're in touch with professionals in that field that can also tell them, hey man, did you know that as a plumber within a few years you can make 120 grand a year? And did you know that an HVAC tech within 5 years is making 150 grand? Now you're working your tail off, but there's not a whole lot of 100 grand jobs in the world.
Nope. And you don't have a debt.
Yeah.
That's a whole other aspect.
That's correct.
No debt.
Correct. And you don't have any debt. But the best part about it is that we can start them. We need to start them younger. We can start them as freshmen. They can see and they can get in and go, you know what, that's not for me. They can, if we get business involved and use our local chambers of commerce to help bring mentors in from business into these other mentoring programs. So we need business mentors, forward mentors for these children and for these parents, right? Give the parents an education to help them make the choice. This state, and I just walked out of a meeting a few minutes ago where it was clearly discussed that we have been trying for years and years to put these programs into place in public schools. And for one reason or another, every once in a while, some of the public school districts have really taken to them and done well with them. Others have not done anything. They've taken the money and run with it. And they get their kids into floral design and other things that are not high-paying jobs by any means.
Or any jobs. How many florists do we need?
Correct. I mean, and they make 35 grand a year. I mean, that's just not a great job when you can start at Knopf Insulation and make $56,000-$60,000 a year starting off.
That's right.
If you can spell and do math.
Yes.
It's really that simple.
Yes.
And so the last kind of point I'm going to make on this particular subject is that if you let parents make that choice, right? Because the schools are not making it for the kids and they're not involving the parents in it. Let parents get involved in that choice. Let's get a lot of these kids out of poverty. Let's get them off the streets, get them off their cell phones, and put them into an environment to where, whether they go to college or not, if they're going to college, they at least have a path that they think, you know what, that may be for me.
Yep.
Or if they're going into the workforce, they know, you know what, this is a path that I'm really interested in because I can make a living and support a family doing it. And oh, by the way, I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
I think it is too. I love that. And that is one of the really, really important things. My brother has career in technical education and is a mechanic. And I couldn't be more proud because it's a great career. And it's something that if I would have known that I could have come out of school debt free, making that kind of money, I probably would be sitting here today because that would be very enticing, as it should be to a lot of kids, and it should be to Texans to want to open that door because we are facing some major gaps when we talk about in the construction industry. When we talk, I mean, you can't, when we talk about housing and all these different aspects, if you don't have workers that can put in the plumbing, if you don't have workers for the HVACs, if you don't have people that can do this, you want to talk about an even greater backlog in issues with housing and things like that.
So can you explain, and this will be helpful to my crowd as well.
Yep.
Can you explain in very simplistic terms how ESA, education savings accounts, can actually do that? In other words, what would a parent be able to get out of that, and could the child stay within their school district?
Yes. Well, so that's a great question. If you decide that you would like to use an education savings account, you do have to unenroll from your public school district because you're not double funding. So across the state of Texas, we fund students in the 2022-2023 school year. Our total expenditures per the Texas Education Agency was $16,792 per child. So roughly $17,000 across the board. So you can't double dip and say, and I want an education savings account. So, but if a student says, I want to pursue a full-time career in technical education while completing my high school degree, they would unenroll from their public school, and then they could enroll in, there's a whole list of either a private accredited school that can give them the credits that they want. They could use their ESA to purchase whatever credits that they want from a public school if they want to participate. But they can also do online learning, blended learning, a whole list of learning to finish their credits for high school while simultaneously also using that ESA to pay for career and technical education. So you can have the choice. So if you're happy with the public school and you don't want to pursue that, or they offer it, like you said, there are a lot of great high schools that already do this, but there's not enough. That's the reality. Is if you're in a district where they've got a really excellent electrical or plumbing or whatever, then fantastic. That's where you would want to be. But if you're not, this opens the door to say, do you want to pursue this path? And you can do that starting at 16. You can actually start moving down the certification for a lot of these jobs. So it was Representative Matt Schaefer. He helped pass a law about a couple years ago to lower that age for certification down to 16, because to your point, kids oftentimes know this by the time they enter their freshman year. I want to pursue something else. I don't want the 4-year college for all. And that's the path that they go on. So then you use it and you can go to a TSTC, which there's, campuses all across Texas. I had the opportunity to tour one in Sugar Land recently, and it was incredible. I mean, they're doing diesel mechanic, linemen, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, all of these different things. And from what they told, if I remember correctly, it was around $10,000 to complete the training in a lot of these degrees. The ESA would totally cover all of that.
Yeah, see, I think that this is one of the things that we also need to deal with. If I'm correct on this, I believe there's 1,900 school districts.
1,200.
1,200 school districts in Texas. Okay, so of those 1,200, there are some school districts that can afford to put in different programs. They can't afford to put in CNC lathes and mills.
Correct.
They can't afford to put in the proper welding equipment. There's a lot of programs that some of them, they say they can't afford to hire a licensed plumber or a master plumber or a licensed HVAC tech to train. But the reality is that a lot of the smaller school districts can't really afford to offer these kind of programs. So that's where, to me, ESA really comes into play, to be able to say, you know what, that student should be able to go get credits and get technical training and get certifications elsewhere. And I don't know that we shouldn't consider some path where they can stay in the school that they're in and be able to do that and get the transportation paid for. It's two separate bank accounts. So the money's in the public education side, and it's also in the ESA account. And then those are two very different bank accounts, probably at different banks, right? And so when you look at how that's funded and how that works, there's the devil's always in the details. But the reality is we want parents to be able to choose to improve the education of their child.
That's it. And that's exactly correct. So our viewers recognize the Perkins Grant, which is the national grant that funds career and technical education. We spend, as a country, about $1 billion a year. Texas said, hold my beer. I'm gonna do it big. And we spend in Texas, in our career and technical education funding, about $3.5 billion a year in our state. So nationally, $1 billion. In the state of Texas, which is awesome. The problem, and there's perverse incentives every market sees. The problem with what we see right now, there's a couple, but in HB3, they allow for you only have to spend 55% of the allocated funding on actual CTE. Well, there's a perverse incentive there. That leaves 45% of that funding for each district to just go to whatever you want. And
that's how you get a bunch of floral designers.
And that's why you get a bunch of floral designers. They're very inexpensive to operate versus a diesel mechanic. Now, conversely, we don't need every high school to have a diesel mechanic shop. If we can serve 90% of Texas by allowing them to go to these certified junior colleges, career and technical colleges, these Texas State, all of that, we should open that door and not entrap kids that don't need or want the traditional, four-year model, being shuttled into the four-year model of school. If kids are ready, we should facilitate that, because the truth is we will never have enough money to build TSTCs on every single high school campus, nor should we be doing that. That is a waste of resources.
Totally agree. Okay, so we are in 100% agreement on vocational training.
Love it.
Right. And now I want to get into, how do we improve teacher pay?
That is an awesome question.
So I don't know if this is part of this program or not.
Absolutely.
But we might as well get into it because I want to.
I want to get into it too. And that's part of the parent empowerment movement, because crazy thing, most teachers are also parents. So, and it is something that is really, really important. So the way that the system is set up, teachers are paid from the basic allotment. Only 30% of the basic allotment has to actually go to teacher pay. Only that much. Well, we also have salary schedules for teachers in Texas. So you can only go so high because the unions and associations advocate against merit-based pay for teachers. Teachers are doing awesome in the classrooms. They don't want that. We all need to be on this salary schedule, and you have to use at least 30%, but the basic allotment is around $6,000.
$6,100.
Yes.
I get to correct you.
Thank you. I was like, oh, there you go. Yes, it is $6,100. That's correct. So only 30%. And I keep saying that. Now, they can use as much as they want of that, because remember, there's all these other weights that are added on. That's how we go from $6,100 to nearly $17,000. That's over a $10,000 jump per student. So that includes federal funding, interest and sinking, and all these other weights that come with the kids as they go. Well, interest and sinking, the bonds and things like that, they can't be used for teacher pay. So we're seeing these massive bonds pass. So we have $185 billion in ISD bonds debt alone. Right. So that's another subject. But they're essentially, teachers are being used as pawns, because right now we just heard in a Senate Education Committee hearing that there is over $20 billion sitting in fund balances for our ISDs. Legally, they're only required to have 3 months of operating expenses, but they're setting on these massive piles of money, billions and billions of dollars, while they're simultaneously telling teachers, we can't give you pay raises. Now, if you are paying attention to the total picture, you can see, just this summer, we had several school board trustees who acknowledged and admitted. I think you've heard this story as well, from someone whose wife was a trustee in there, that they told a lot of trustees, don't give teacher pay raises because we need to leverage them. We need to quote him, weaponize them to get teachers to vote a certain way. So teachers are caught in the middle of a philosophical battle about freedom and what's most important for kids. I would say parents, empower parents and teachers. And that's why opening up the marketplace, the education marketplace, is really, really crucial. Because right now we don't just have a monopoly for education for kids. If you don't have the money to strike a check for a private school or you get into a charter school or homeschool, then there's a monopoly. You're forced based on the zip code you live on. But the same thing for teachers. It's called a monopsony. There's not that many places for them to go and say, I want to be a teacher. When you open up freedom with education savings accounts, teachers then can say, you know what? Superintendents and school board that get to vote on this and sit on a whole bunch of money, I and all these teachers are going to get pay raises. We're not going to pay that association over there. We're not going to pay this lobbyist over there. We are going to take care of teachers. And if you don't, I'm going to go to another school. Or, you know what? Maybe I want to start a school.
What do they call those? Micro schools?
Micro schools.
I think that's right.
Learning pods. And I like to tell teachers, every child comes with about $17,000. If you've got 30 kids in a classroom, do the math. Do the math. There is over $500,000 sitting in your classroom right now, and you're making on average $62,000.
Right.
Where's that money going? Profiteers. Right. Steering money out of the classrooms because, and they're up here. And I know you've met some of these crafty profiteers. A lot of them are lobbyists or consultants, and they're telling you how things must be done.
Correct.
And it's an intentional way to steer money out of the classroom because we're approaching $100 billion. That is a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to make. $92 billion. To public education in Texas.
Yeah.
$92 billion.
Less than 40% goes in the classroom.
And we're talking about, at least in last session, we were talking about a $500 million allocation to education savings accounts.
Right.
I mean, so just recognize it's a rounding error in $92 billion.
It is.
I mean, they drop more than that on the floor.
Yeah.
And in the school districts. And it's true.
It is.
And I'm not slamming the school district. We have so many good school districts, and I'm very lucky in HD 56. We have a bunch of great school districts. There's no doubt.
Yes.
But being able to diversify the education, being able to then go and say, you know what, we do need to pay our teachers better, and we are willing to spend money to educate our children better. And if we need to make adjustments to the things that we're dealing with, then let's make adjustments, right? But let's adjust to where we're moving the needle. I want to move the needle on grade level math and grade level reading. Yep. Let's move the needle on what's happening with vocational training, job preparedness training. Let's require basic courses on how to even think about going to work. And what do you do when you go to work? You know, one of the things that I've been very lucky, one of the businesses that we're in is Urban Air. Urban Air's indoor amusement parks. Yeah. And so each one of those will have about 50 to 70 kids that are high school kids that work in them, right? And we do need to get into that piece of it with businesses and how they bring in kids to train and work into these larger companies. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
But so we take those kids and we teach them accountability. We teach them responsibility. They're watching out for other kids that are playing in the park, right? And they're watching to make sure parents aren't doing the wrong things and making sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing and it's a safe environment. So they understand safety, accountability, responsibility. You can't have your cell phone on you. You can't be on social media while you're doing it. You better clock in on time or you'll get fired. You better, when you're told to clock out, you clock out.
Yeah.
And you know you don't get a free Coke every 15 minutes, and you can't go to the bathroom every 10 minutes.
Right.
I mean, these are things that they learn in high school that are basic premises that we should be teaching them, whether they work for Urban Air or not, right? But and luckily for us, we're able to go hire the cream of the crop.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need 50 or 60 in an area that may have 50, 40 or 50,000 kids.
Right.
But it's a challenge that as a state, as a legislative body, as a government, we need to help them.
We do. And you touched on several things there that are really key for the workforce, right? That set kids up to launch and be successful in life and reach their full potential.
For college too, though, by the way.
Yes, it is for college, for all of this. But one of the things that I hear all the time from teachers, in fact, I have screenshots from a now former teacher. He left, he was Midland ISD. And he reached out. He was so frustrated because this was a second career. He was asked to come back and teach high school level mathematics, accounting, calculus, things like that. He was a former accountant or CPA. And he sent me screenshots of the PowerPoint presentations given by the school saying you cannot fail a kid ever. A child cannot receive less than a 50. You must accept homework at any point in the term. It was right there. He said, what are we teaching these kids? This is not preparing them for life. And then he showed where he said, and then when I give grades below the 50, the administration comes in and will change my grades. He said, I'd had enough. Like, this was the second career I was doing it because I want to teach kids.
You want to take that real quick to a business perspective?
Well, the point here is,
if you fail in business, you fail for me, I'm going to fire you.
That's right. And that's it, is we're not teaching these kids from a very young age that there are expectations in your conduct. You're expected to show up on time. You're expected to do the work when you're assigned it. You're expected to turn it in. And if you don't, there are consequences. And look, that's not just there. I'm just talking about this one teacher that sent me the screenshots. I hear about this from teachers all across Texas. They are frustrated as all get out. What am I supposed to do when a kid doesn't? I can't give them a bad grade. We're just told just to go over it again, to go over it again, to go over it again. And it's very frustrating. But what's as terrible as the frustration teachers feel right now, when we talk about teacher pay, look, teachers don't go, you know this, they're not going in there to get rich. They want to make a living, but it's a calling in their heart. And they're frustrated that they're not being respected. They can't discipline in their classrooms, that they can't enforce timelines on anything. That's what I hear a lot from teachers. And on the other side, what are we teaching these kids? If you can't show up on time, like you said, if they don't show up to work, they're fired. You're going to go find somebody else. You can't argue your way into forcing businesses that must create a profit to actually exist to keep workers around if they don't work.
So we have 2 hamburger joints in the same chain in Waco, and they're 5-6 miles apart, right? One of them has horrible employees. The other one has really good employees. One of them makes bad hamburgers and bad fries, and the other one makes really good hamburgers and really good fries. Same chain.
Yeah.
5 miles apart, 2 different owners.
Mm-hmm.
I always choose to go to the one further away.
It's worth that drive.
Because I want a better hamburger, right? I want a better life for my kids.
That's right.
I want a better education for my kids. I should have the choice. I'm not tied to go to the one that's closest to my office.
I love that. That's what school choice is about.
It's a better hamburger.
Right? It's a better hamburger. It's a better
education. It's that simple. Why do how can this be so hard to fix?
Well, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. You're the one that's meeting with your superintendents, those that are oftentimes advocating against empowering parents with these choices, not just to leave. Let's be clear. The highest take-up rate around the country is about 6%. For universal, fully funded, like parents want to leave. It's only 6% of parents that actually remove their children from their assigned public school. So, but school districts know they can do it. They have that option. And like we've talked about before, we know that in Florida, for example, their low-income kids specifically, those that struggle the most disadvantaged, they went from number 33 in the country to number 1, where they still are today. Arizona, we saw similar gains. Indiana from 22 to number 3. I mean, It works. It incentivizes these public schools, but you're meeting with your superintendents. You tell me what those conversations are. Why in the world would any red-blooded, freedom-loving Texan not support parents being the ultimate decision maker of where their child goes to school?
All right. So obviously that conversation has changed over the last few years, and certainly over the last election cycle.
Yeah.
So my answer to that is look, first and foremost, the rhetoric that they're using is all the same. So they're obviously being taught, they're reading from the same hymn, they're singing from the same hymnal, and I know where that hymnal is coming from, as do you.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is that the way that I put it to them is like, look, that light at the end of the tunnel is a train. And you thought it was a freight train. It's not. It's a passenger train. You either get on the passenger train or get run over by the train. Don't stand on the tracks, because we have a way to shape this. We have a way to work together to make this work, right? And we have to work with our teachers. They are going to form micro schools, and they can make more money and teach better classes by having micro schools. It's a fact. Look at Indiana. Indiana is one of the most successful. They have one of the most successful CTE programs. Their teacher pay is far higher than ours. Their retention rate is higher. Their public schools have grown by 300,000 students since they put it in place, and over 300 schools. That's facts, right? I mean, so nobody's telling them those facts.
Right.
And that's where we've got to paint the train with all these facts and paint it and educate these people and bring them with us. Because we want to slow down. We want the train to be slow enough for them to get on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get on one way or another. And so the key to it is we want them, we want their kids, we want their parents, and we simply want to move the needle and make more and more improvement as time goes on.
Yeah.
And so you want to fault me for that? Vote me out. Vote me out for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to. Honestly, the more conversations I have, the better they go, whether it's superintendents, whether it's school board members. And once you sit down and talk with them about it and go counterpoint with them, they're not being told these things.
Right.
So what I keep asking them, they want to talk about their budgets. And I'm like, so do you know what Article 3 is? And they were like, no. Okay. Do you know who the sub-chairman of Article 3 of the Appropriations Committee? No. Okay. Do you know the chairman of Appropriations? No. You heard of it? Well, I've heard of it. Okay, so you know that's where the budget is? That is the budget. Right now, granted, it's got to go through there first. Well, the first 60 days of the session, all that stuff's going on down there, while y'all are up there talking about ESA,
right,
in public ed. That's a squirrel going across the line, man. Your budget's happening down in the basement, and y'all aren't even there. And by the way, you're not even there, sir or ma'am. Where are you? You're at home dealing with your kids, and you've got lobbyists that are sitting down there talking for you that have a whole different purpose than you do.
That's right.
And that bothers me. I want you to come down. I want you to sit with these legislators. I'll set up the meetings. I want to have McLennan County Public School Day. And you bring anybody you want. You bring students, you bring superintendents, I don't care who you bring, just don't bring a quorum. That's all I ask. Because then you got to have a public meeting for that too. But at the end of the day, come down and talk to these people, ask any question you want, and they'll tell you no lies. You just got to come down and be a part of the process.
I love that. I'll tell you, so a lot of people may not realize this. We host a lot of schools here at the foundation at TPPF. We've got a big, huge theater, and we host schools. They're usually either homeschool or homeschool co-ops or charter schools or things like that realize that freedom and parents and those advocating for freedom for parents are not the opposition to schools.
So is that an offer where I can bring the McLennan County School?
It is. It is an offer.
Consider it taken.
We can help set up those meetings. We do lots of education. We have, we can do civics education and things like that. So it is. I'm throwing that out. We would love to have them and show that we really want to support the next generation of Texas to have the very best education possible. And if that's in that school district, then that's fantastic. We want to make sure that you get the funding that you need to educate children to reach their fullest potential, to recognize their purpose here in life. So we want to do this together. The rising tide will lift all boats. And so I'm inviting you to bring your districts and your superintendents, and we'll sit down.
Wait,
and we'll
wait. This
talk
was
to
my
'em.
idea.
Well,
You can't just take it from me.
yeah, but I have the
I mean,
space.
yeah, I understand, but I'm going to take advantage of the space. But I mean, that was a
It's
good
there.
try. That was a very good try
It's
on your
your
part.
idea.
That's my idea.
You can be the MC. Welcome, everybody.
Oh, no. I'm going to hide. I'll let them fire questions at you. No,
All
I'll
right.
be happy to be there. Look, I do think it's important, and I've said this from the very beginning. I believe that this is probably one of the most miscommunicated bills that I've seen in my adult life in the legislature.
Yeah.
Just watching it from the cheap seats,
Sure.
I can just tell you, our job now is to communicate it properly, listen to the points that we need to listen to, adjust where we need to adjust.
Mm.
This is not a final end-all, be-all situation either. Right. This is, we're going to put something in place. Yeah. It is going to happen. Yeah. And by the way, we're going to have to stop for repairs on the track, and we're going to have to fix some things as we go, and we're going to measure the results as we go, and we're going to make adjustments as needed, and we're going to listen to our school districts, and we're going to listen to the private schools, and we're going to see what we're getting from CTE. All these different things we're going to have to do, and over time, we're going to make adjustments as we go. Those adjustments occur with true communication.
Yes.
Right? And that's where having the constituents, no matter which side of the constituents, whether it's parents, administrators, teachers, you name it, bringing them in and saying, you know what, we don't need somebody between you and me. This table is open between us. We can talk all we want.
That's right. So get rid of the lobbyists, the consultants.
I think it would help.
I think it would too. I think it would help.
That's a whole different podcast.
It is, but it does go into this because you said it. I mean, they're up there walking the halls, showing their incorrect information that they know is incorrect, and yet when
they're taking it back, they're sending it out and training it, and when they're doing the continuing education. Mm-hmm. And giving the credits for continuing education to the same people that I'm going to call it indoctrinating, which they are.
That's what they're doing.
That's an issue.
Yep.
So that's another issue we need solved.
That is.
And so that's a whole nother conversation, Mandy. And we will
have it.
Right now we're working on moving the needle for those kids for the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic.
I love it. Okay. So before we wrap up here, I would love for you to look in that camera right there. Talk to the parents of House District 56. Talk to the patriots of Texas. Talk to the taxpayers, the grandparents, and the teachers who need to understand that you and a whole new group of Texans are coming to the Capitol to course correct a system that's gone off the rails, and why everyone together should join us on the parent empowerment movement so that we can save the next generation of Texas.
Okay, well, that's a lot.
It is. You can do it.
Look, I first and foremost want to say that being fresh into politics and being fresh into this situation, I have not met a person yet in Austin, in Waco, in McLennan County, or otherwise who doesn't truly care about their children and the education of their children. And our job here is to make that better. Our job is to move the needle. And so don't think for a minute that anybody has an ulterior motive. Nobody does. Nobody involved in this process has an ulterior motive. The governor himself has no ulterior motive. Everybody wants the same thing. It's just a question of how we get there. It's not the what, it's the how. And the how has been tested and tried in many different ways over the last 20 years. And honestly, with all the changes that have occurred in social media and other things, there's been a lot of changes that we've not adjusted for. So we've been able to watch this process unfold in other states, learn from other states, mistakes that have been made, gains that have been made, and be able to take the best of the best. Indiana being a great example, Florida being another good example, other really good examples. And if you go do your homework on those states and what's happened with school choice in those states, and look at the numbers, look at the numbers that are out there. They're usually on the public school websites, and you'll see that the needle has been moved. That's what we want. We want our kids ready for the workforce. We want them ready to go to college. We want the ones that should go to college and do really well. If you're going to spend that much money on an education, you ought to be able to get that much more for it. And by the way, you don't have to spend that much money to go make really good money and support an entire family on what you make. But you got to trust that we know what we're doing, man, and our hearts are in the right place, and that we're going to fight and fight and fight for your child and for our own children and for our grandchildren. I have a brand new granddaughter. I can tell you everything I'm doing is for her. Nothing else matters to me now, because she is the future of this country, and your children are the future of this country. And my parents were the future when they were children as well. And we know that our families care more about these children than anything else in the world. So trust us when we tell you, we will make this better, and we will work very hard to do it, and we'll leave no stone unturned.
Pat, Pat, thank you for your commitment to Texas. Thank you for your commitment to your children, your grandchildren, that new baby girl that has her whole life in front of her. I know that makes me, I'm so excited for you, because I do, that love that we have for our children and the grandchildren is unlike any other. And that's what we're fighting for, the
That's
next generation of Texas. So thank you for being here today. And I cannot wait to see how excellent this next 89th legislative session is going to be. I know that you and all of your colleagues are going to do really great things for the next generation for Texas. Thank you all for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.